Hey guys, today I'll show you a fantasy horror TV series named Siren Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a mermaid exploring the depths of the ocean when she spotted a sunken ship ahead. Curious, she decided to swim over to investigate what had caused this vessel to meet its watery grave. As she entered the cabin, she found the body of one of her own kind. Something about the scene set off alarms in her head, sending her into a panic. Suddenly, a violent sonar wave came blasting through the water. The wave, generated by some cannon, struck the mermaid with great force, sending her reeling. The intense sonar waves left her with a splitting headache. The day before, a series of unusual events had unfolded in the town of Bristol Cove. The sea lions at the Marine Research Center became restless and agitated, rolling over and over in the water. A school of red salmon was swimming at high speeds, heading towards the shore. Sea lions leaped onto the docks, bellowing loudly. Maddie and the fisherman Xander, surrounded by sea lions, were petrified by the scene. Meanwhile, the siren Rin was at Helen's store arranging items on the shelves when a sudden violent tremor startled her. Strangely, Helen nearby seemed completely unaware. Rin felt as though something was moving and ran after this disturbance, racing toward the sea. But when she arrived, the anomaly had vanished. She was planning to buy some seafood to satisfy a craving when the disturbance reappeared, this time accompanied by the distress calls of various fish. Elsewhere, the biologist Ben was out at sea alone on a speedboat, trying to clear his mind. He noticed something odd on the ocean surface and stopped. Picking up his binoculars, he saw a large group of fish leaping out of the water, moving rapidly. Upon his return to the Marine Research Center, he also observed the sea lions swimming restlessly back and forth. Then, a phone call came in saying there was an unusual situation developing on the town's coast. Ben immediately grabbed his gear and rushed to the scene. At the same time, the sheriff and his daughter Maddie also received calls and headed towards the same location. Ben reached the town's coastal edge and saw many dolphins stranded on the shore. But there, he also encountered Rin, the two people who had promised not to see each other again, now brought back together by fate. Maddie also arrived at the scene, creating an awkward love triangle, but pressing matters were at hand. Ben got straight to the point. Rin informed him that only one dolphin was still alive. Two young ones had stopped breathing. Ben was ready to call Marine Rescue to move the surviving mother dolphin back into the sea. It seemed as if they had been driven ashore by something in the ocean. Rin was concerned this situation might also endanger her own people. She decided to return to the deep sea to investigate, and to avoid being seen, they took a boat out to the middle of the sea. They equipped Rin with a tracking bracelet to ensure her safety to some extent. Rin dived into the sea, enduring tremendous pain as she transformed into a mermaid and swam down to the ocean floor. When she reached the seabed, she discovered the bodies of her kind inside a fishing vessel. Suddenly, a sonar wave cannon attacked her, causing unbearable pain in her head. Ben, monitoring her position through the tracking device, also noticed something was wrong. After recovering, Rin continued forward, only to be hit by another sonar wave that swept her away. Ben realized that Rin seemed to have lost her direction and was circling the seabed. As he considered how to help her, they noticed a nearby oil company's ship anchored and doing something. Suddenly, Rin swam past swiftly. Ben immediately followed her in the boat. They followed Rin's tracker into the woods, and when they found her, she was shivering and lying weakly on the grass. Fortunately, Ben and Maddie found her in time. Rin shared with them what she had seen underwater. Ben surmised that the ship they had seen on the surface was from the oil company, mapping the sea floor with sonar cannons to find suitable drilling spots. However, at that moment, they heard several screams. They cautiously went to investigate and shockingly found the corpse of a mermaid that had only half transformed. Not far away, the hunters were struggling in their dying moments. They were Rin's people, forced ashore by the sonar and seeking her help. Rin explained that many accidents can happen during their transformation, and they were always learning how to avoid these incidents. Ben, being a biologist, quickly determined that the hunters were suffering from pleural effusion, preventing them from breathing properly. A puncture was needed to drain the fluid from their lungs. Luckily, the mermaid's lungs were located in the same place as humans. After draining the fluid, the hunters immediately resumed normal breathing. At the same time, the sheriff, being removed from his duty, officially handed over his badge and service weapon. His successor was the deputy. Before leaving, he meaningfully told her to call him if she encountered any strange problems she couldn't solve. Elsewhere, the mermaid descendant Helen had just woken up to find several naked people staring at her. It turned out that the leading mermaid, Katrina, had brought them all over. Helen had just finished dressing them when Rin was brought back by Ben, who just missed the naked scene. The mermaids surrounded Rin. They had thought she was dead and were overjoyed to see her alive. At that moment, Rin caught sight of Wanda, which reminded her of her deceased sister. Wanda was unaware that her mother had been killed by humans. Meanwhile, the former leader, Katrina, who had been slapped and deposed by Rin, didn't seem to genuinely submit to Rin, reluctantly performing the mermaid's courtesy to her. The newly arrived mermaids were ignorant of human life and found everything novel, loving to rummage around like a child. Rin had to supervise them. Helen showed a troubled expression upon learning that the mermaids had been forced ashore by underwater sonar, realizing that they would have to stay on land for an extended period. Mermaids are naturally active and can be highly destructive. One could never know what trouble they might cause. Therefore, Ben drove his father's car to take them to one of his many holiday homes, settling them into a small wooden cabin. Whether more mermaids would come ashore was unknown to Rin, but this would be their new home. Meanwhile, in the town, people were talking about the strange events at the coast, and this attractive woman named Nicole was subtly flirting with Xander, seemingly trying to glean some information. Seeing that Xander wasn't taking her hormone bait, Nicole approached the fishing boat to flex her attractive figure, endlessly praising Xander for owning his boat, displaying an admiring expression. This flattery was too much for the inexperienced Xander, and soon enough, she successfully captured his affections. Quickly, Xander sent her an official invitation for a date, and Nicole immediately revealed a triumphant smile, turning to report to her superior that she had successfully approached the target. It turns out that the military had linked the death of Xander's father to the mermaids and had sent Nicole to replace the dead henchman in continuing to track the fishing boats and find clues about the mermaids. The scene shifts to the group of mermaids hunting on land for fish. They're practically no different from humans. As their new leader Rin approaches, all the mermaids pay their respects to her, except for Katrina, who has the look of someone asking for a slap. After all, being used to being in charge and then suddenly being dethroned, one can't help but feel resentful. Rin walks toward one hunter named Levi, who is watching the birds, seemingly quite taken with the place. Rin moves toward Wanda, and seeing her in good spirits, breaks the news of her mother's passing, advising her to be strong like her mother was. Wanda is heartbroken but doesn't want to show her vulnerability, holding back her tears as she cries quietly on her own. Everything seems harmonious on the surface. Ben brings them food, and Helen acts as a nanny, teaching them to share food like humans. A bearded mermaid seems more interested in beardless old ladies like Helen. He approached her to flex his sensitive beard, stroking her hair, and suddenly kneeling on one knee to express his love for her. At that moment, they notice Wanda showing signs of dehydration. They need to quickly find a way to get her back to sea since the sonar has a range and some areas are relatively weaker. For safety, Rin decides to first look for a place where it's safe to enter the water with Ben, leaving Maddie to watch over the group of dehydrated mermaids to prevent them from causing trouble. Ben worries about unforeseen circumstances and hands Maddie a rifle for protection. The mermaids, seeing her armed, become alert and the atmosphere grows tense. After they leave, Maddie lights a fire to boil some water to drink, but when she turns around, she finds herself being observed by the mermaids. She realizes they have never seen fire before, so she explains that it is fire, and humans use it to cook food. The blonde mermaid, curious, touches it and immediately burns her hand. The other one also feels it and finds it hot. While they are attracted to the fire, Katrina picks up a homemade wooden spear ready to hunt, ordering the bearded mermaid and Wanda to go with her. The bearded mermaid refuses, still thinking of himself as the boss, but the rebellious Wanda agrees to go with Katrina. The bearded mermaid immediately stops her and Wanda turns back, giving him a cold look, asking him not to stop her. The bearded mermaid was still concerned about the safety of his two mermaid companions, so he decided to follow to protect them using his sensitive beard. On the other side, Ben leads Rin to a diving area on the coast, where the sonar's influence is much smaller. Since the place is too crowded during the day, they decide to act at night. Afterwards, Ben seeks the help of a SEAL trainer from the Marine Research Institute, someone skilled in high-tech, to help Rin create a realistic fake ID. Meanwhile, by the riverbank, they were catching fish. Wanda, who had transformed and come ashore for the first time, had low endurance and became weak from severe dehydration. She found a spot to sit down and rest. Suddenly, she heard a low growl from behind her. Turning around, she saw a husky staring intently at her. As a top predator of the sea, she wasn't about to show weakness on land. The husky pounced at her. Just then, a gunshot rang out. Maddie appeared just in time, scared off the husky and saved Wanda. They carried the now bitten Wanda back to the cabin. Rin looked at the little girl with a heart full of pain, blaming Katrina for not following orders and acting on her own. She told Katrina that she was stronger than her, and Katrina had to listen to her. In the evening, they followed the plan to bathe in the sea. Just as the mermaids finished transforming, the unexpected happened. A group of revelers came to the beach to party, unaware that a group of predators was swimming below. They couldn't be stopped, jumping in like dumplings in a pot, ready to become an unintended meal for the mermaids. The deposed sheriff was also there to clear his mind. When Maddie saw her dad, it was like seeing a savior. She quickly pulled him over to help disperse the careless crowd. In the blink of an eye, as the mermaids spotted their target and swam over, tragedy struck. People heard screams, panicked, and ran ashore. The police arrived and sealed off the area. They asked the sheriff what exactly happened in the water. He suggested there might be sea lions around. Xander understood what was beneath the surface at a glance. He asked Ben how many had come this time. Ben said a small group of 6 and also told Xander that an oil company was conducting sonar exploration, causing noise pollution. The mermaids were driven ashore and would have to stay for 8 months, including the killer of his father. When he heard that the murderer was also there, Xander was furious, pushed Ben away and cursed as he was about to dive in after the killer. Ben quickly grabbed him from behind, knowing that diving in would surely provoke an attack from the school of fish and expose the mermaids to the public. Ben immediately dragged Xander ashore. Xander, struggling to break free, punched Ben. His own buddy was harboring his father's killer, and Xander was incensed. Seeing him lose his reason, Ben punched him back, pushed him to the ground. The sheriff came over and separated them, and so he left in a huff. Seeing this, Helen told Ben that Xander would be trouble in the future. After bathing in the seawater, Ben took the mermaids back to the cabin. Katrina snuck off alone into the woods. The next day, as they were sunbathing outside the cabin and sharing food, Katrina returned suddenly, carrying the body of the husky that had bitten Wanda, and threw it in front of them, showing the new leader what strength means. Afterward, the mermaids took a stroll together through the forest. Ben and Maddie introduced the deep-sea dwellers to the wonders of terrestrial nature, mentioning that a long time ago, their kin might have lived right here. Just then, Ben noticed Wanda about to touch a dangerous plant and quickly intervened to prevent her. Maddie informed her that it was poison ivy, a plant that could be very harmful. Rin understood and conveyed to them in the mermaid's way that such plants could cause injury and should not be touched. At that moment, a deer burst into their view, triggering their hunting instincts. They swiftly gave chase, but it was clear they weren't as fast on land as they were in the water, and they got a bit overheated from the pursuit. Rin, noticeably quicker, had already caught up and overtaken them. Just as they were about to cross a road, a car came speeding along. Fortunately, the experienced driver braked just in time. Otherwise, it would have been like a bowling strike, and a perfect one at that. The driver, cursing, was about to get out of the car for a confrontation, but Katrina rushed forward, ready to fight. She was stopped by Rin, who saw the driver assess their overwhelming numbers and decide it was better to beat a hasty retreat than to face a loss. After returning, they feasted on the deer meat. At this time, Maddie noticed that Rin was showing signs of dehydration. However, she couldn't let Katrina see this, as Katrina was always looking for an opportunity to defeat her and reclaim leadership of the merfolk. To help alleviate Rin's dehydration, Maddie went to the ocean center to get some medicine. Unexpectedly, she found a huge water tank in the storage area, sparking a bold idea in her mind. Humans have been using sonar cannons in the ocean for exploration, causing noise pollution and severely disrupting the ecological balance. Forced ashore, the mermaids cannot stay away from seawater for long, as it leads to their growing weakness until their lungs cease to function. Ben thought of the oversized fish tank in the storage room at the Marine Research Center. He decided to fill the tank with seawater to meet the mermaids' needs. However, this meant that many would have to squeeze into the warehouse to live. Katrina immediately objected to this. Seeing Rin always supporting Ben's decisions, Katrina began to mock her, sarcastically asking when humans became their leaders and criticizing her leadership skills. Frustrated, Rin grabbed Katrina's hair, which promptly made her behave. Unable to win and unwilling to tolerate, yet she had no choice but to endure, always looking for an opportunity to land a fatal blow on Rin and regain her leadership. Filling the large tank with water was going to take time, and now Katrina saw her chance. Rin had become weak from prolonged dehydration, and Katrina was not going to miss this opportunity. She launched an attack on Rin, who ran towards the large tank. If she could just complete her transformation, she would instantly become powerful. Katrina knew this and desperately tried to prevent her. In the struggle, both fell into the now water-filled tank and began their painful transformation. To the amazement of onlookers, their process of change became transparent, a miraculous sight as they transformed into mermaids. Witnessed by their tribe, the struggle for power began. The two mermaids wrestled their muscles in the tank, with Katrina initially getting the upper hand and Rin being thrown out. At this point, seeing Rin threatened activated the effect of the Siren song in Ben's mind. He involuntarily picked up an oar and quickly approached the tank's platform to help Rin, but was pushed back by her. His actions violated the mermaids' rules of survival. Battles for dominance amongst mermaids do not allow any outside interference. In the end, Rin's powerful tail struck Katrina hard, leaving her defeated and incapacitated. The contest was decided. To counteract the song's effect on Ben, they prepared to record Rin's song for research. However, the Siren's song had to be sung directly to a person, and Ben could no longer listen to the mermaid's song, or he would lose himself even more. So, Maddie wore soundproof earmuffs in advance. But Rin's song seemed to penetrate directly into the soul, and even with earmuffs, one could still get lost in the melody. On the other side, Nicole finally got her wish to hook up with Xander, hoping to tease out the real cause of his father's death. But Xander wasn't truly a fool. He was an expert at playing dumb. Several times, the truth almost slipped out, only to be swallowed back at the last moment. Katrina, severely injured, takes advantage of the other's sleep to stealthily leave. Even though Rin won against her, Katrina couldn't accept Rin's all-too-human approach to leadership. She wanted to return to the sea but found herself at the harbor, where she encountered Xander out for a late-night walk. In the pitch-black harbor, Xander was sending messages to his girlfriend while trying to clear his head. Suddenly, he heard a woman's pained moans. Anxiously, he turned on his phone's flashlight and scanned the surroundings, discovering bloodstains on the ground. Driven by curiosity, he followed the trail to a corner where Katrina lunged out, intending to startle him. He was indeed taken aback to see Katrina clutching the wound on her stomach before collapsing unconscious. He realized that she was the one with the mermaid who killed his father. Determined to avenge his father's death, he bandaged Katrina's wound and locked her in the fish hold of his boat. Xander questioned her through the skylight, asking where Levi, his father's murderer, was now. Katrina, like a trapped animal, furiously pounded the walls, completely ignoring his words. Xander had no choice but to turn away and leave. When he returned, the hold was silent. He opened the hatch only to find Katrina's life or death uncertain lying there. He had to take a harpoon gun to the bottom of the hold with caution. Facing the formidable mermaid, Xander had to be careful. He loaded the harpoon gun and after preparing himself, quickly opened the hold door. Gripping the weapon, he cautiously approached the lying Katrina, who suddenly opened her eyes and kicked him away, rushing to snatch the harpoon gun from his hands. Xander pushed Katrina's heavy body down and took the opportunity to run out and close the hold door. Katrina fired a shot at the door, always one step behind. She pulled the harpoon out of the door and inserted it into the seam of the hold door, unexpectedly prying it open in just a few tries and escaping. Katrina scrambled onto the deck, only to be met by the waiting Xander. Yet, he simply watched her attempt to flee, not the least bit concerned. Xander was well aware that the cabin door couldn't contain mermaids. He had already set the ship adrift in the open sea. He knew that the sound wave cannons lurking below the surface, which the merfolk feared, meant that Katrina had nowhere to escape to. Xander wasn't worried about Katrina killing him. Without him, she'd be trapped on this fishing vessel, doomed to die. Why not strike a deal instead? Pointing to a nearby vessel, he told Katrina that it was the source of the sonar pulses preventing their return to the sea. If she helped him find his father's killer, he'd take care of the problem and let her return to the ocean. After agreeing to the terms, Xander navigated the fishing boat back. On the other side, the mermaids, idling in a storage room, were getting into fights out of sheer boredom. It was only a matter of time before they were discovered. Rin decided that they should be separated and watched over, which would also help them adapt better to human life and build trust with humans. They were to assimilate into human society, retreating into water tanks when weak. He had even created fake identities for each of them. Levi and the bearded mermaid took turns guarding the large water tanks to prevent sabotage. During this time, Levi chose to live with Ben, the only male human among them. Maddie also felt that as a man, Ben was the best choice to teach Levi. As he left, he gave a goodbye kiss, an action that Levi observed. So Levi tried kissing Ben as well. Ben, filled with curiosity, took Levi to a bar, who soon got himself involved in a game. Before long, the man lost bet after bet, nearly finishing all the drinks in front of him, drawing a crowd of onlookers. Levi kept winning, and as the man's pride was wounded and he was about to start a fight with Levi. Seeing that, Ben quickly stepped in to separate them, explaining that sometimes in the human world, the real winners are those who don't throw a punch. He urged him to go home, but Levi was on a roll and refused to leave, wanting to continue seeking chills. He looked around, observing human behavior, and noticed a couple kissing. It seemed merfolk didn't kiss, so Ben curiously asked how they chose a mate. Levi explained that in their matriarchal society, the females chose the brightest and best-looking males from the throat area as mates. They would grapple, bite, and violently strike males with their tails. Many males died during these mating rituals, which explained the low reproduction rate among merfolk. Afterward, Nicole, noticing this suspicious group, used her relationship with Xander to strike up conversations with Ben and the others. She must have guessed something was off, and soon Levi was enjoying a pleasant conversation with a woman, even inviting her to dance. Levi, imitating the moves, began to dance. At that moment, Wanda saw a wanted poster of her mother on the bar's wall. Maddie noticed her concern and took down the poster for Wanda to keep. Just as Levi was learning how to kiss a woman, her actual boyfriend happened to see and in a rage lashed out. Levi deftly dodged, and Ben intervened to stop the man. However, the man threw a punch at Ben, who was trying to break up the fight, and Ben responded with a heavy right hook that took the man down. Fights could lead to jail, so it was best to leave quickly. Having completed a day of learning, Levi went to relieve the bearded mermaid from his guard shift. Maddie returned home, only to find her mother had relapsed into drug use. This left her heartbroken. In tears, she fled to her rented room. Feeling sympathetic, Ben held her in his arms to comfort her using his muscles. Rin also tried to console Maddie, who had put all her sorrow out of her mind. On the other side, Xander brought Katrina back to the harbor, who was now fully recovered from her injuries. But the proud Katrina had no intention of leading him to his father's killer. She merely used Xander to get ashore and then left on her own. As the former leader of the Mermaids, she believed that only the strong deserved to lead. Compared to her, Rin obediently followed the commands of the physically weaker humans, which, even in defeat, was not a position of honor for her. She intended to resolve the mermaid crisis in her own way. Xander, feeling deceived, went to find Ben. Ben was worried that Xander would see Levi, who had killed his father, and lose his sanity. So he told Levi to stay in his room and not to go anywhere. Xander recounted to Ben how he had saved Katrina and expressed a desire to help her return to the sea. Ben told Xander that the mermaids couldn't go back and that the situation was only getting worse. An oil company had discovered oil beneath the sea, and soon they would bring in a drilling ship. In 5 to 10 years, there would be no living creatures left in these waters. Many fishermen, like Xander, relied on fishing for their livelihood. This would directly affect Xander's means of earning a living. Ben said that they needed to find a way to stop all this. Upon hearing their meeting, Nicole immediately reported it to the military. Elsewhere, as Rin observed Wanda grieving for her mother every day, she decided to take her to pay respects to her mother's grave. Wanda refused to believe her mother was dead and wanted to dig her up to confirm that her mother wasn't inside. Rin restrained this distraught girl, saying her mother died in a battle, killed by a human. Wanda shouted at her, unable to believe why she spent all day with humans since they killed her mother. No matter how much Rin tried to explain, Wanda refused to listen to her bullshit. She locked herself in her room once they got home, not wanting to see Rin. It was during this time that Katrina found Wanda. She used Wanda's hatred for humans to recruit her back under her command. Together, they broke into Ben's residence and forcefully persuaded Levi to join their cause. At the moment, Xander sent a message to Nicole suggesting a date. They planned to spend a pleasant evening together on the fishing boat. In good spirits, he was about to celebrate with a bottle of beer when, turning around, he was confronted by an enraged Katrina who smashed a bottle over him. He attempted to flee. However, Wanda blocked his escape, and Katrina knocked him to the ground with a punch, informing Wanda that this was the man who killed her mother. But they couldn't kill him yet. They needed Xander to pilot the boat to take them away from here. With that, Katrina locked Xander in the cabin. Xander deeply regretted saving Katrina. At that moment, he saw another figure in the corner. It was the murderer of his father. Levi, having resisted, was severely injured by Katrina. Just as Levi was about to apologize, Xander lost his sanity and began to beat him relentlessly. Levi did not fight back, no matter how much he was beaten. Xander then used a chain to strangle Levi, who was struggling to breathe. Just as he was about to avenge his great grievance, he let go. He had understood when he accidentally killed Wanda's mother that even if he killed Levi, he wouldn't be at peace. His own father couldn't come back to life. The recovering Levi explained that he was just a soldier following Katrina's orders to kill. Now, Xander's only thought was how to escape from this place. He felt his pocket and found his phone still on him, and quickly called Ben for help. Ben received the distress call from his friend and came to the harbor alone. Seeing Wanda looking around on the deck, he tiptoed stealthily towards the fishing boat. He picked up an empty oil drum and threw it to the other side, successfully distracting Wanda. He took the opportunity to rush onto the boat and quickly made his way to the cabin. Opening the cabin door, he woke the dozing pair and helped the injured Levi prepare to leave. By the time Wanda heard the noise and started heading their way, Ben shouted loudly to draw her attention and ran in TikTok style, leading her away. By the time she realized she had been tricked, they had already helped Levi escape. What they didn't know was that Nicole, who had come for the date, had witnessed everything. Meanwhile, Katrina had climbed to the window of Helen's house on the second floor. The mermaid companion quickly opened the window to let her in. She was surprised to see that Katrina, although severely wounded by Rin, had not died. Katrina convinced the companion to join her group. The blonde mermaid, however, insisted on supporting Rin, but Katrina declared that those who were with her prosper, those against her perish. If she didn't obey, she could only die. She then launched an attack on her. The blonde mermaid quickly turned and ran into a room, locking the door behind her. The next day, Rin learned that after Katrina had taken her people by force, she tried to approach the situation in a more human way. She instructed the bearded mermaid to feign defection and lured Katrina to her sister's grave to negotiate. Rin was determined to lead her kind to coexist with humans in a new world. However, Katrina believed in the survival of the fittest and considered humans to be weak and insignificant, inherently at odds with them. Although their philosophies differed, they shared the same goal: to return to their deep-sea home. This meant they had to work together to destroy the oil company's drilling equipment. So Rin managed to convince Katrina, and they came to an agreement. Elsewhere, the sheriff passed his psychological evaluation by his superiors, and the town council decided to reinstate his position. But just as he returned to his post, another accident occurred. A fisherman had recovered the old captain's body, and forensic examination confirmed death by spear, bringing the truth about Xander's father's death to the surface and threatening to expose their fabricated lies. After an investigation, the FBI identified Ben and other 3 suspects present on the boat during the incident, with the victim being Xander's father. A month earlier, they had taken the fishing boat out to sea to hunt mermaids. The old captain was killed by a mermaid, and to conceal the existence of mermaids, they gave the captain a sea burial. Now, as they recorded their statements in the interrogation room, inconsistencies in their testimonies prevented the investigative team from convicting them. They could only detain them temporarily. The next day, to everyone's surprise, the 4 were inexplicably released. With military involvement, the FBI dropped the murder charges, and the case was left unresolved. It turned out that Xander's newfound girlfriend, Nicole, had military connections. The military had long been seeking to study mermaids in hopes of medical breakthroughs. Nicole said she wanted to persuade the mermaids to volunteer for research, which could yield even more insights. Just the day before, Nicole had come to Rin's residence. She informed her that the military was aware of her identity as a mermaid. If Rin agreed to volunteer for military research, she would use her military influence to secure their release. Rin, anxious to save people, felt compelled to comply with Nicole's request. Soon after, Nicole escorted Rin to the military base. Full of curiosity, Rin entered a room where a group of disabled individuals were training. Nicole explained to Rin that they were soldiers who had survived the war with disabilities, and only Rin could help them become whole again thanks to the mermaid's powerful regenerative abilities. On the other hand, the group that had just been released made their way to a bar where they discussed why the military had intervened to free them. Ben speculated that they must be under military surveillance. Xander, looking at his girlfriend at the bar, seemed to make a connection. After his father's death, Nicole had appeared before him. Without time to ponder these things, they were planning a major act. They were preparing to join forces to destroy the oil company's drilling equipment. Ben had calculated the entire operation plan. Once the oil company's underwater sonar was turned off, the mermaids would swim to the seabed at a depth of 800 meters to cut the drill columns. They would then use Xander's fishing boat to pull out the drill columns and directly damage the equipment vessel. With this, the mermaids could successfully return to the deep sea, forcing the oil company to suspend the project. For the plan to proceed smoothly, Ben personally taught the mermaids how to use a cutting torch, whose flame could burn normally underwater. Rin quickly mastered the use of the cutting torch, while the other mermaids learned how to bind the drill columns with ropes. However, once transformed, mermaids would revert to their natural instincts, and Maddie worried they couldn't complete the task, but they had no choice. Only mermaids could dive to such depths of the sea. Perhaps this would be their last gathering. They planned to destroy the oil company's offshore drilling equipment the next day because the released sonar waves made it impossible for any creatures within the area to survive in the sea. If the mission failed, the mermaids would perish at sea. If successful, they would return to the deep sea and be separated forever. They all loved each other, and the separation was always tough. They hoped to leave each other with the best memories. The next evening, the group boarded Xander's North Star fishing boat. Xander steered the boat towards the battlefield. At night, they quietly arrived near the target, turning off all lights on the boat. Ben and Maddie would dive first to destroy the sonar cannon. Otherwise, the mermaids couldn't dive. They swam towards the direction of the sonar cannon, and since Ben had scouted the area days before, he easily snipped the sonar cannon's signal line. When the disabled sonar cannon sank to the seabed, the people on the boat received the signal that the sonar had vanished. The mermaids jumped into the sea one after another, heading to the drill columns with their tools. Xander reminded them that the hooks were sharp and to be careful. The mermaid girl took the hook and jumped into the sea, but no one noticed that Wanda had not dived in. She took an axe from the wall and approached Xander. Without waiting for an explanation, she swung the axe, intent on killing him to avenge her mother. However, Wanda accidentally cut the gas pipeline in the process. Meanwhile, the mermaids proceeded systematically. Rin began to cut the rotating drill column, while others bound it with ropes. They cooperated orderly with each other, and soon Rin successfully cut through the drill column. The movement of the drill column caused by the ropes led to a severe malfunction in the machinery above, and the entire drilling rig slowly collapsed under the workers' gaze. At that moment, an accident occurred. The ropes binding the drill column suddenly came loose. The bearded mermaid quickly moved his bulletproof muscles to protect the two mermaids, but the speeding hook struck him right in the neck, ending his fishy life. The mermaids watched in grief as their companion made the ultimate sacrifice. On the other side, Xander was still evading Wanda's attacks. In a panic, he fumbled in the drawer and pulled out a flare gun. Firing at Wanda, he accidentally ignited the leaking gas line. Instantly, a huge fire erupted in the cabin. Startled by the blaze, Wanda fled for her fishy life. Luckily, Ben arrived just in time to rescue Xander from the inferno. However, his fishing boat sank to the bottom of the sea amidst the raging flames. Rin led the mermaids as they slowly swam towards their deep-sea home. The scene shifts to the bearded mermaid's funeral held in the depths of the ocean. The mermaid tribe gathered around their sacrificed companion to pray. Following mermaid tradition, Rin placed seashells on his body and removed all worldly items from him. After his family took one last look at him, he sank into the silt until he disappeared from sight. The mermaids then dispersed. After all, the deceased was gone, but their lives had to continue. In the next scene, a little girl was shown playing by the sea when she suddenly spotted a fishtail on the shore. She called her mother to have a look, but her mother urged her to come home quickly. The girl poked the fishtail with a stick and then turned to leave. A wave washed over and the fishtail turned into silt, swept away with the tide. It seemed the mermaids had come ashore once again. Sure enough, Rin returned. First, she visited Helen's house to return the necklace that Helen had given to the bearded mermaid. Helen, upon hearing of the bearded mermaid's sacrifice to save his companions, was overwhelmed with grief, mourning the loss of her hard-won twilight romance. On the contrary, Ben and Maddie were overjoyed because they could be together playing hide-and-seek under their big blanket again. Ben told Rin that during her time in the sea, the military agent Nicole had come looking for her. Rin revealed that she had made a deal with Nicole to save Ben from prison. The military had helped release Ben, and in exchange, she agreed to cooperate with the military for genetic experiments. Just then, Ben's brother called, and they learned that their mother had been rushed to the emergency room. Ben hurried to the hospital. A few years ago, Ben's mother had been paralyzed from the waist down due to a car accident. Unable to accept reality, she had desperately sought cures and participated in an immature medical experiment that not only failed to heal her legs, but also caused complications. The paralysis was spreading, and she had lost sensation in both arms. It was quickly going to spread to her lungs and then throughout her body. Afterward, Nicole found Ben and told him that mermaid stem cells could heal paralyzed mice, and that was his mother's only chance. She hoped that through Ben, Rin could be brought in for military experiments. But Ben didn't want Rin to get hurt and outright refused her. However, the next day, after talking with his brother, he learned that their father's company had incurred massive debts due to years of fish shortages and had cooperated with the oil company out of desperation. Now they were even struggling to pay for their mother's medical expenses. Feeling guilty for having sabotaged his father's oil project with his own hands, Ben went to Nicole to talk. After returning, Ben told Rin that he hoped she would cooperate with the military for their research. He wished to cure his paralyzed mother and promised to be with Rin every step of the way to ensure she wasn't harmed. Rin, in love with Ben, was willing to do anything for him and agreed to the military experiment. Led by Nicole, they arrived at the military lab and began the stem cell extraction experiment. The scene shifts to Rin swimming inside a military research lab's aquarium, her movements observed by scientists eager to witness her entire transformation process. A water lift gently hoisted her out as staff hastily captured every moment with their cameras. Once out of the water, she was bathed in the glow of bright lights, surrounded by a team of researchers meticulous in documenting everything, anxious not to miss a single detail. Rin writhed in pain upon the cold steel, her body tearing and reforming. Soon after, she shed her fishtail and transformed into a human form. Driven by his heartache, Ben quickly helped her up and took her away. Just the day before, his mother had fallen ill and become paralyzed, her condition worsening by the minute. Rin was in the hospital room with Ben's mother, who was in excruciating pain. Rin extended her hands and used her miraculous voice to soothe Ben's mother's pain. Ben begged Rin to collaborate with the military to save his mother, promising to do anything if it meant her recovery. The benevolent Rin agreed and accompanied Nicole to the military research center, allowing them to take her fluids and conduct various research projects on her. Normal protocol for clinical trials on humans would take months, but Ben's mother didn't have that much time. With nothing left to lose in the face of inevitable death, Ben decided to use the military's refined stem cells on his mother immediately, which proved successful and ultimately saved her life. However, due to the experiment, Rin was faring poorly. For days on end, large amounts of spinal fluid had been drawn from her, leading to some abnormalities in her condition. It all came to a head during a trip to the supermarket when a mere bump from a passing woman triggered Rin's aggressive instincts. Initially, they thought Rin was just in a bad mood and didn't think much of it. But when they returned home, as the three of them were about to snuggle under a big blanket, Rin suddenly grabbed Ben by the throat. She seemed not to recognize the person she was choking and was intent on killing him. Maddie and Ben managed to push her heavy body away, a move that truly scared them. They didn't dare go near Rin again and decided to take her to the warehouse at the Marine Research Center to contain her. There, Rin heard the sound of seals and charged over, full of murderous intent. Maddie managed to stop her just in time, pointing out that if Rin jumped in, the seals would likely not survive. They tried to talk her down, hoping to bring her back to her senses. Rin gradually calmed down, but the situation was too dangerous, and they dared not inform the military. If the military found out that Rin was uncontrollable, they would imprison her. At that moment, Nicole called Ben, saying that she had discovered something unusual in Rin's blood. It turns out that excessive spinal fluid extraction triggered the release of a unique hormone in Rin's body. This hormone structurally resembles cortisol, also known as the stress hormone, which caused Rin's berserk state. Unable to overpower her, they placed Rin in an aquarium, but Ben underestimated the impending mermaid rampage. The surge of hormones soon led to Rin completely losing control. She couldn't hear Ben calling out to her and shattered the thick aquarium glass to escape. Acting on instinct, Rin ran straight for the door and dashed deep into the woods, leaving Ben and Maddie behind, helpless, as the forest in the area was too vast to search. Their last hope lay with Nicole, hoping she could find Rin. As a military agent, Nicole proved her skills by using the military's satellite system to lock onto the target area. Since mermaids have a low body temperature, they pinpointed Rin's location with thermal imaging. Soon they were on her trail. Armed with tranquilizer guns, they split up to search. But Rin easily shook them off. She stalked Maddie, who had become her prey, luring her into a trap. In the meantime, Maddie tried to reason with Rin. Seeing the crazed mermaid in front of her, Maddie started trembling with fear. When Rin saw Maddie with a weapon, she felt threatened and began to sing the siren song. Maddie couldn't help but drop her weapon, getting lost in Rin's melody. Fortunately, Ben arrived just in time. He understood all too well what the song meant and quickly intervened to stop Maddie. After the song, Rin collapsed, exhausted. The hormone levels in her body had rapidly depleted, and she soon returned to normal. Ben called out to Rin, and when he heard her respond, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, Rin had no memory of what had just happened. Now they worried about the effect the mermaid's song might have had on Maddie. A mermaid's song can have many effects depending on the situation. If sung to a lover, it can be enchanting. To prey, it can be deadly. As shown previously, the bald henchman heard Donna's song and ended up throwing himself into the sea. The other one also heard Donna's song and now suffers from amnesia, albeit saved by the military and living in a daze at the research facility. To understand the impact of the mermaid's song on the brain, both Ben and Maddie underwent MRI scans. The results were startling. When they compared the scans of the bald henchman's brain to their own, they found varying degrees of damage, particularly affecting the frontal cortex, the area responsible for controlling reason and emotion. The song seemed to make people impulsive and uncontrollable, leading to irrational behavior. Rin herself had not anticipated the extent of the harm her song could inflict on a loved one, so they attempted to use recordings of the siren's song to find a remedy. During this time, Ben's mother called. She had rapidly recovered her health after being injected with mermaid stem cells and wished to invite Ben's girlfriend Maddie over for dinner. She also wanted to mend the strained mother-son relationship and extend the invitation to Rin, who had helped ease her pain during her illness. Surprisingly, she also invited Helen. Ben's proud mother had always refused to acknowledge their blood relationship because Helen's mother had been a prostitute. But perhaps it was time to bond as a family. She had grown fond of Rin, who had relieved her pain like an angel during her toughest times. Helen asked Rin what she had done to Ben's mother, to which the mother replied that Rin placed her hands on her and then sang. As everyone sat down for the meal and chatted casually, Maddie began to hallucinate. In front of everyone, she blurted out that the three of them were in a romantic relationship. The revelation shocked everyone to the core. After her announcement, Maddie leaned over and gave Rin a deep-to-throat kiss, then turned and kissed Ben, who was too stunned to react. The awkwardness was palpable. Maddie, regaining her senses, left in embarrassment. She was on the verge of a breakdown, realizing that this was the mental confusion caused by the mermaid's song. The mother's condition soon required a second injection of mermaid stem cells, but continuously extracting stem cells from Rin would necessitate singing to someone to release hormones to counteract the side effects. Now, their pressing issue was how to eliminate the effects of the song on their brains. Clearly, the military was powerless in this unknown territory. Maddie stormed out in frustration, and Rin felt compelled to find a way to help them. Afterward, Rin returned to the deep sea and summoned the blonde mermaid, who had the healing power. After examining the situation, the blonde mermaid said that the energy left in the brain was too strong and she was unable to remove it. However, she knew of a mysterious place that could heal the effects of a mermaid's song, but it was located 4,000 meters deep in the ocean, a depth unreachable by humans. Originally, they had asked the military for a submarine, but the bald man was not pleased at the idea of handing over a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment to a civilian. Nicole stepped forward with divine assistance. Understanding the bald man's desire to control the power of the voice, she quickly persuaded him. After all, the bald man had ulterior motives. He wanted to use the voice as a weapon, or probably to heal his baldness. The condition was that the entire process had to be recorded in detail. So, they descended into the depths in military diving equipment. For Rin, it was the first time she saw her home from a human perspective, and everything was unimaginably beautiful. When they reached 3,000 meters below sea level, Ben turned off all the monitoring equipment, fearing that one day the mermaid's sanctuary might be destroyed by the military. They continued to advance until the seabed began to collapse, seemingly like the strike of an earthquake. Ben and Maddie were panicked by this sudden event, but Rin seemed to know it was going to happen. They gradually sank until they disappeared into the mud and sediment. When the descent stopped, they discovered an underwater world beyond their imagination. Through the window, they looked out at the wonders. This was where Rin was born, the breeding ground of the mermaids. Suddenly, a mermaid appeared before them. It turns out to be Katrina, and more mermaids appeared and swam over. The mermaids outside started hitting the strange object again, causing the submarine to shake violently, scaring everyone inside. If the submarine were damaged, being 4,000 meters under the sea, they would surely perish. Ben immediately activated the sonic disruptor, driving away the school of mermaids. Watching the mermaids leave, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It was best to move on quickly before they returned. Following Rin's guidance, they reached a place that seemed endless, a place even Rin had never been to before. They feared they might get lost. At that moment, Ben realized the submarine was completely out of control. All the gauges and instruments shut down automatically, and no matter what he did, he couldn't restart them. Just then, a gate of light appeared in front of them. They all watched in amazement as a mysterious force guided them forward. They slowly passed through the light gate and entered the origin of the Mermaid tribe. The song was everywhere, ancient and melodious, the ancestral song of the Mermaid tribe. Ben and Maddie quickly became intoxicated by the song. Meanwhile, from the footage of a previous incident that damaged the drill string at the seabed, an engineer working on an oil drilling project discovered Rin, who had transformed into a mermaid. All videos were deleted by the military, and a complete blackout was imposed on any news of the attack on the drilling ship. However, this particular segment was accidentally overlooked. With that finding, the engineer sold the footage to a reporter from this TV station. After Ben and Maddie went ashore, a military research institute examined their brains. It was evident that the shadows in their brains had been cleared. The songs from the mermaid's place of origin indeed healed the brain damage caused by the Siren's song. Overwhelmed with joy, they embraced each other, but without a kiss. Now, free from the threat to their lives, the three of them happily lay in bed, watching a Daniel C.C. horror movie and starting a carefree life. Unbeknownst to them, their every move was being monitored by the military, leaving them with no privacy whatsoever. The scene shifts to Xander, who is temporarily working in a bar to make ends meet after losing the fishing boat left to him by his father. Suddenly, the music in the bar changes, and a familiar figure appears before him. It's the mermaid boy, Levi. It seems he has taken a liking to the lifestyle on land. As the mermaid society is matriarchal, he finds more freedom on land to choose what he wants to do. Xander, however, is not pleased to see him. After all, it was Levi who killed his father, and the fishing boat was burned down because of the mermaids. He just wanted to get rid of Levi, so he lured him out with a bottle of beer. Xander and his friend left him at the harbor, hoping Levi would return to the sea. At that moment, two debt collectors arrived to pursue Xander's friend for debts he owed. Without money to pay back, they started to get physical to teach him a lesson, threatening him to return the money. The debt collectors were about to overpower Xander and his friend when suddenly they were thrown out, landing heavily on the ground. It turns out Levi had come to their rescue. Seeing that Levi was not someone to mess with, the debt collectors beat a hasty retreat. It seems Levi didn't want to go back, and having saved them again, they found it even harder to send him away. They needed to find a place for him, so they took Levi to Helen's house. The next day, Rin and her group came to pick up Levi. It was nearly the breeding season for mermaids, and they were beginning to glow all over, needing to return to the water for this important ritual. The mermaid population was dwindling, and for several seasons, none of the mermaids had become pregnant. Before returning to the water, they needed to determine what was causing the infertility among the mermaids. They didn't want the military to know that more mermaids were coming ashore. They took a blood sample from Levi, planning to take it back to the military lab for analysis. As they left, they encountered the reporter. He recognized Rin, thinking she looked similar to the person in the video, so he began to follow Rin and the others, and saw them enter the research institute. The tribe of mermaids, with their numbers dwindling year by year, struggled to reproduce. For some unknown reason, none have become pregnant for many years, and this year is no different. The goal was to help Rin solve the problem of their tribe's reproduction, working alongside the military's Marine Research Center to find the cause. With the military's assistance, they discovered that the sea had been severely polluted. A substance known as bisphenol, originating from human trash and discarded plastics, was identified. This substance can cause endocrine disruption, which is the main reason why mermaids are unable to reproduce. In an effort to save this endangered species, they planned to use in vitro fertilization techniques. They intended to extract two reproductive substances from their bodies and artificially cultivate mermaid embryos, then implant the embryos into Rin. The military doctor combined the two necessary substances for reproduction, and soon they observed cell division, indicating that they had successfully cultivated embryos. Everything was going smoothly until Rin suddenly doubled over in pain. The military could not detect any abnormalities and concluded that it was a normal reaction to the extraction of the reproductive substances. Rin looked weak and was advised to stay for observation, but Ben insisted on taking her home to care for her. They did not go home due to the pervasive surveillance cameras. Instead, they went to a small cabin. Soon, the weak Rin fell asleep. The stalking reporter who had been tracking them took this opportunity to sneak in and kidnap Rin. Still, Ben discovered them as they were getting into the car. The reporter drove off quickly. On the way, he hurriedly called his TV station boss, intending to make the mermaid's identity public. Ben followed closely behind, honking for the reporter to stop. But the reporter pressed the gas pedal even harder, determined to steal the mermaid and reveal her identity. Ben took a shortcut to block the reporter's path. The reporter hit the gas, showing no sign of stopping. The weakened Rin woke up, lunged forward, and yanked the steering wheel, causing the car to crash into the guardrail and plunge into the sea. The greedy reporter crashed through the guardrail in a panic, and the car fell into the sea with both of them inside. As the car sank into the ocean, the soaking, weak Rin began to transform. The reporter tried to escape for his wet life but was trapped by his thigh and couldn't move. As the water level inside the car rose, the reporter grew more desperate. Rin soon completed her transformation, swam past him, broke through the windshield, and escaped. Ben also arrived at the scene. He saw the reporter inside the car pleading for help and tried to pull the car door open. Ben hesitated, watching the struggling reporter because he knew too much and had harbored ill intentions towards Rin. But in the end, Rin still rescued the reporter. The reporter, having narrowly escaped death, kept assuring Ben that he would keep the secret of the mermaid. However, the very next day, the reporter disclosed the existence of mermaids on the news channel. Footage of Rin's transformation into a mermaid was broadcast on television. Viewers who saw the footage recognized Rin sitting to the side. They began to attack this being, which they perceived as dangerous. 2 months later, as the truth about mermaids came to light, the military sought to use more mermaids for research and experiments. The army aggressively began to encircle and capture mermaids, throwing the entire town into chaos. They blocked all roads in and out of the town, and even installed a network of sonar cannons at sea. Anyone detected to have mermaid ancestry was rounded up without exception, and Helen was one of them. She was captured and sent to the detaining camp where she met many others ending up like her. Meanwhile, Xander and his friend used a voice-controlled device to lure and capture mermaids, selling them to top-tier wealthy individuals. Ben wanted to resist, but was surrounded by the military, making a last stand. It might seem sad, but there's no need for sorrow because the story doesn't end here. The drama provides an alternate ending where Ben, while at sea, did not rescue the reporter. He refused to leave his fate in the hands of this greedy individual. In the end, he chose to let go of the car door handle, turned away and left, leaving the reporter to drown to his death. However, in that way, he would live the rest of his life tormented by guilt. And that's where the second season ends. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.